Welcome to Leawood 360. City voices, community stories, full circle Leawood. I'm Beth Brittenstein, Leawood Strategic Communications Director and your host. Each month, we take you behind the scenes of the people, programs, and policies shaping life in Leawood, Kansas. From local leaders to passionate residents, we're talking with the voices who make this community thrive and bringing it all full circle. Hi, I'm Beth Brittenstein, and welcome to Leawood 360. And today we're diving into something that will shape the future of our community for decades to come. Leawood's comprehensive plan. It's called Leawood Rooted and Reaching, and it's about honoring our city's strong foundation while looking forward to what comes next. If you've ever wondered how decisions are made about growth, parks, housing, or even how Leawood will look and feel 20 years from now, this episode is for you. We'll break down what a comprehensive plan is, why it matters, and most importantly, how you can be a part of it. And joining me are two people who live and breathe this work every day. Julie Hurley, Leawood's Planning Director, and Michelle Cricks, Assistant Director of Planning. They'll share not only the nuts and bolts of the planning process, but also their personal passion for creating a community that reflects the values and vision of the people who live here. So let's get started. So first, I want to start with a bit about both of you. What sparked your interest in city planning and what keeps you passionate about shaping Leawood's future? Julie?
So I did not even know that city planning was a thing. I didn't know it was a career or a job that I could have. I always wanted to be an architect, and so I went to school to get my degree in architecture. And while I was doing that, I took a couple of electives in planning and kind of got introduced. And then my senior year of college, I lived with a girl who was getting her master's degree in planning, so I saw what she was working on, and I thought, I think that is more what I want to do. And it took all the things I love about architecture, the design, and how making things fit together and how things work, and just put it at a lot larger scale. And so it just seemed way more interesting to me and way more in line with what I actually wanted. So did a little bit of a pivot and then got my master's degree in planning, and here I am.
Awesome. And for you, Michelle, what was your discovery of planning?
So when I was in undergrad school, I was an environmental studies major, and I actually had an elective in environmental planning with this amazing professor who is so passionate about urban planning and environmental preservation, sustainability. And she's really the person that sparked my interest into going into urban planning as a whole, because there's so much that you can bring into urban planning and so many different topics. So I went on and got my graduate degree in environmental planning. And what I love about planning is that I get to still do some environmental work, but I also get to do, you get to touch on so many topics, especially when you're in city planning.
And I know when I first heard of the term planner, coming from my world of being close to event planning and early in my career, I was like, okay, so you plan events. So obviously we're planning whole cities here. So there's a distinct difference there.
Yes.
Do you still get that?
100%. When you say planner, everybody thinks, oh, the party planner or the event planner. So you have to specify. We're the city planners.
Or we're the financial planners.
Yet another planner, but you just do the whole city. No big deal here. And we'll get into, what all that entails here. So Leawood's comprehensive plan was last formally adopted in 2002 and only adjusted slightly annually since then. Why is now the right moment, Julie, for a full-scale update of the city's comprehensive plan?
20 years is about the lifespan for a comprehensive plan. That's pretty normal. These are very involved plans. We don't want them to only last a couple of years and then have to do a new one. So we're really looking towards the future. So we want them to be usable and valid for a while, but a lot changes in 20 years. Market conditions now are a lot different than they were in 2002. We can all think about a lot of things that have gone on to change, the landscape that we're living in. So we're due, and I would say that probably in the last 23-ish years, we've had a lot more changes than we have in decades past, so definitely due for it.
Right, and just kind of going back to the word planning and planners, there's lots of ways to take that. The city recently adopted a strategic plan, which we spoke to the mayor and city administrator about on this podcast. How would you explain what a comprehensive plan is to someone new to that concept?
So I would say that the comprehensive plan is really kind of the roadmap for the future of the city. How do we want to see the city grow and change, and what do we want to see happen in the city as we go forward? As we all know, there isn't a whole lot of open land left in Leawood to build out, so we won't necessarily be quote unquote growing a lot, but there's still going to be things happening and changing over the course of the next 20 years or so, and this is the document that's really going to tell us how that should go. All the things we see happen in the city, whether it's roads being redone or a park being built or a new building, those don't just happen by accident. There's a plan for it, and so this is what's going to tell us how those things should progress.
And the comprehensive plan contemplates more than just land use decisions. What kind of other topics are involved in a comprehensive planning process?
So there's a lot of topics that we are going to touch on in this comprehensive plan update. Not only are we going to look at land use and land use patterns, we're going to take a look at housing. We're going to take a look at transportation. We're going to take a look at environmental and sustainability. We're going to look at resiliency for the city. So there's a lot of information that's going to go in here, and a lot of ideas that come from the public as we work through this process through the public engagement.
And kind of speaking of that process, I know if you go to the comprehensive plan website, leawoodrootedandreaching.com, there's different categories from discover all the way to regulate. So can you walk me through kind of how those things break down?
So as I just said, I mean, it all really does start with a public engagement and kind of a really good, a big idea. We never want to walk into this process with preconceived ideas. This is the plan for the city, and it's all based on public input. So we start out with those really big ideas. We get the public involved. We have our website that's available for the public that they can go to. We are having a charrette in November that will have public engagement. We've had visioning workshops. We have a pop-up event coming up to really gather public information. And so what we do along with our consultant is we're going to take all that information and start trying to pull those big ideas under each of those topics. And then we start drilling it down more as we're getting consistent feedback maybe about specific topics. We're going to start pulling that into goals and policies under each of those major topics. And ultimately then as drafts of the plan are brought together, they get put back out for public review, and then the public will have an opportunity then to take more comment about how that plan is shaping out. So it's a very transparent process. It's nothing that we do behind closed doors.
And I know that the city has been busy starting that public engagement process. Can you, Julie, speak maybe a little bit more to some of the specific ways reaching out has happened thus far and how it will contribute to the plan?
We are really making a concerted effort to talk to everybody who's involved in the city, whether that's residents or business owners or development professionals. Everybody has a little bit different perspective on what's going on in the city, what's working well, what we love about Leawood, what maybe we could do better going forward. And so we're really trying to take a bunch of different ways of reaching out so that we hit all of those different groups so we can get all of that input from everybody, so that we can take all of that back and, like Michelle said, really incorporate that into the plan. So we're not just hearing one voice. We really want to hear from everybody. We know that the best way to do that is to have different means of engagement, whether it's, like Michelle said, going out to pop-up events, to events that are already happening within the city and talking to people, or inviting people to come in, or doing one-on-one interviews with folks, just really doing anything we can to get all of those voices heard and included in the process.
And I know you all were at the Touch a Truck event earlier this month that I think drew 1,400 people. And so when I wandered past your booth, I couldn't even see the planners because there were so many people engaging. Can you talk a little bit about how you engage the community in a setting like that and what kind of activities you had to get people involved?
For something like that, where we're at a already scheduled event, we want to do something that's engaging and really quick and easy. So what we did at Touch a Truck and what we'll be doing for some of our upcoming events that will be out in the public is we just had a really simple question: what do you love most about Leawood? And then we had a few different jars that were labeled, whether it's parks or our tree canopy or our businesses, whatever those topics were, and people could take some marbles and just put them in the jar that represented what they like about Leawood. So as with anything, when you're just kind of showing up at an event, you want to get people in, something that they can see and something they can do really quick and easy, but that still gives us some meaningful feedback.
Did you see any emerging winners from the marble activity in the jar? It seemed like when I went by there, they were pretty full all across the board. People love Leawood for many reasons, but did you see anything that was an emerging theme about what people wanted to know more about or topics that were important to them?
So we did count up the marbles from each of the jars, and if I remember right, I want to say that the schools and our great education system was one of the top ones. The parks and trails was one of the top ones. I know those are really well used and loved. But yeah, they all had really high response. So obviously there's a lot of things that people love about Leawood, a lot of things that we're clearly doing well in the city. And so that's good feedback in itself. We can continue with that momentum that we have going on.
So the name Rooted and Reaching seems to capture Leawood's story, honoring the city's history while looking forward to the future. How will the plan reflect that vision?
We put a lot of thought into the name of it, Rooted and Reaching. Again, Leawood has done a really good job over the last few decades with being really deliberate with how we grow and develop and what we bring to the city. And so Leawood's got a great base, right? Great roots. So that's what we're starting from. And like I said a little bit ago, we don't have a lot of land left to build out, so we're not really maybe going to be growing too much, but we're still reaching towards the future. And we don't want to just sit here and stagnate. Okay, we've built everything out, so we're done. Nothing left to do. So this is really figuring out what are we reaching towards and how do we keep growing and evolving and moving forward. So that's really where the name came from. And so I think it's a really great reflection of where Leawood is now as a city.
So we've been talking a lot about what we love about Leawood. Obviously, part of this plan is identifying what challenges and barriers there are as we look toward the future. Is there anything you've heard thus far that maybe, is identified as a challenge or something we need to make sure we're on top of as we think 20, 30 years down the line?
I think a big challenge that we will be facing is addressing housing needs, not just within Leawood, but I think within the entire metropolitan area. We've heard it time and time again that people want to age in Leawood. And so how do we capture that? How do we address that? So people can move out of their large home, they want to downsize, but they want to stay in Leawood. And so we want to make sure we're looking to those opportunities. People want to have maybe what's considered a lock and leave opportunity also. We've heard that where, maybe they want to do a lot of traveling. They don't want the maintenance. And so I think that's a big challenge that we're looking at. And this effort, as we hear from different stakeholders, we hear from the community, we hear from homes associations around Leawood, I think we'll be able to kind of flesh a lot of that information out.
Back to you both and your experience as you both have many years under your belt and are experts in this field, certainly. So could each of you share maybe a past planning project you worked on? Is there something you really are proud of or that had a visible impact on the community, past communities you've worked for or current community that feels particularly meaningful for you?
Yeah, so I use this example a lot. Back when I was in graduate school, I was an intern for the city of Lenexa, and they were just at that time going through their initial planning process for the Lenexa City Center. And so much of planning is really long term, right? It can take years or decades to see things come out of the ground and to look like they did on the plans that you were looking at, way back when. So I remember being this intern at the city and they're working on this plan and just seeing what they were doing. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And all of Lenexa west of 435 was just this open field. There was nothing. And so it was a really neat exercise in looking at that whole process and trying to imagine what it would look like. And now it's there. And I personally am over there several times a week doing different things, and it just feels really neat, even though I wasn't, a professional planner at the time working on it. I was the intern kind of getting to see what they were doing, but just finally seeing it, oh, here it is in the flesh. It happened. So that's always the big one that sticks out for me.
Love it. Oh, the beauty of working for local government, too. You get to see the fruits of your labor. And for you, Michelle?
So I had the pleasure of working on the Leawood Dog Park and bringing the vision of former council member Lou Rasmussen to life. We got to take that plan through the planning process. It was very satisfying for me to play even the small role I played in that project that provided such a great community benefit, and today Leawood Dog Park is located in such a beautiful location in City Park, right by Indian Creek, and has become a really popular addition to Leawood's park spaces.
And one of the best use of puns in naming anything with Leawood. I had a resident reach out on Facebook once asking if it was misspelled and we meant to say Leawood, and I said, absolutely not. That is Leawood. Congratulations on both of those projects because they're both amazing. So one big theme here is, of course, how do we turn this vision into reality? That's always what people want to know. A plan is great, but how do we execute the plan? So after the comprehensive plan is adopted, the city plans to update the Leawood Development Ordinance to align with the community's priorities. What does that next step look like, and kind of what's the short-term roadmap to do that?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So once the comprehensive plan is adopted, the consultants, along with staff, will actually start proposing updates to the Leawood Development Ordinance based on how that comp plan shakes out. The comprehensive plan is the overall policy documents where the goals, policies, and objectives are outlined. The development ordinance will codify the goals, policies, and objectives derived from the plan. So it's really where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, is when we get into that secondary process of this overall effort. The Leawood Development Ordinance actually is already starting to be reviewed by our consultant. Staff has already provided some sections of the code where additional scrutiny is needed. We've been maintaining a list for over a year from input not only from planning staff, but from internal city staff and the public, where additional study is warranted within the LDO.
I'll just add to what Michelle said with the Leawood Development Ordinance. That's our document that we use probably the most. We use it every day, all day long. Other departments use it, and so we hear a lot of feedback on things that work and don't work in it. And so I think that's something that the city has heard for a while, like, hey, there are some things in here that we need to look at doing better. And the LDO, like the comprehensive plan, is about 20 years old when it was put together. So we can kind of piecemeal changes here and there as things come up. But again, just like the comprehensive plan, it's time for a broad look at it. And there's a good opportunity to really make that better.
So maybe talk a little bit about how do you know that this planning process is succeeding? So what milestones, changes will indicate Leawood is on the right path through this process?
Since we're putting so much effort into public engagement and really listening and taking into account what people want to see for Leawood, one of the biggest measures of success, I would say, is when we start seeing those things happen. So we heard you, we listened, we crafted this plan around what you told us. We crafted our development ordinance around what you told us. And now those projects that you told us about, they can actually start happening.
Makes sense. And for both of you then, as you think 10, 20 years out, is there any part of the future that you're the most excited or hopeful about, and why is that?
I'm excited to see how resiliency can play a role in Leawood's adaptability and sustainability as the Kansas City metropolitan region overall grapples with several dynamic factors such as economic, climate, housing. I believe Leawood has an opportunity to become a regional leader, demonstrating what resiliency can look like. And I think we have an opportunity with this plan to lay that framework.
So I would say, just really broadly, what I'm most excited about Leawood's future is really just building upon the great base and roots that we have. Like we've said a few times now, Leawood's been really deliberate with crafting this high quality community that everyone knows and loves. And we have such an engaged and passionate resident base. I don't think I've ever seen people care this much about the city they live in any of the other cities that I've worked in before. So I love it. I think it's so great. I think it's going to really help make this plan successful. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how we build upon and grow on what we've already got that's so great in the city.
Awesome. And so for our listeners, we talked a little bit about ways to get involved. The best way to start getting involved is to go to the website, leawoodrootedandreaching.com, where there is a live survey up right now that folks could participate in. It gives you a list of all those events we're talking about, the pop-up events in the future, an open house that's coming up this fall. So that's the way that you get involved. And I can't let either of you leave without asking the same question that I ask everyone. What is your favorite spot in Leawood? And that doesn't have to be hidden. It can be well known, but what's your favorite spot in Leawood?
My favorite spot is the Roastery. And I have been coming over to go to the Roastery every weekend since well before I worked here. That's kind of my favorite after gym spot on a Saturday and Sunday, is to come over. And now you can probably find me over there most mornings before work getting my coffee, and it's just my favorite coffee shop, and I love that it is pretty much right across the street from my office now.
Town Center, the gift that keeps on giving, right? And for you?
I would have to say one of my favorite spots is probably driving down Lee Boulevard. It's a beautiful and peaceful drive, but it's also a link to Leawood's humble beginnings as a quiet suburban neighborhood designed by the Crow brothers before the city's incorporation in 1948. It's so beautiful. I love the homes up there. I love the tree canopy. I love the winding roads. It's just one of my favorite spots in Leawood.
Me too. Brook Beatty Park in there. So thank you both. I know you're very busy planning the future of the city with the help of our lovely residents. So thank you both for taking time out of your day to talk to us today.
Thank you so much.
It was great to be here and talk with you.
And now it's time for your round out. That's 4 pieces of news you can actually use. First up, it's lights, sirens, and bounce houses at the police open house. If our Touch a Truck event earlier this month taught us anything, it's that our littles in Leawood love our police and fire department and their cool equipment and toys. 1,400 of you showed up for that event. Well, there's more fun to come. Join us Saturday, September 20th from 11 to 2 at the Leawood Police Department. You can meet the officers, check out drones and canine demos, grab some free food, and yes, the bounce houses will be waiting. It's a sports-themed, all-ages event you won't want to miss at the Leawood Justice Center on Town Center Drive. Then the following weekend, we can't forget the fire department. We've all seen how kids react to fire trucks, right? On Saturday, September 27th, swing by Fire Station 1 to climb on the trucks, tour the fire safety house, try your hand at CPR, and even see Leawood's very first fire engine from 1949. It's free, it's hands-on, it's always a community favorite over at Fire Station 1 on Lee Boulevard. Third, the city has the funds ready for an awesome 2026. The governing body officially adopted Leawood's 2026 budget and capital improvement program. Translation, your tax rate is staying steady, services remain top-notch, and big investments are coming to our streets, parks, public safety, and so much more, all while keeping our rock-solid AAA bond rating. Dive into the details at leawood.org/budget. And last but certainly not least, spooky season is calling. Insert spooky music here. That's right. Into the Night Fall Festival is Friday, October 10th. Always a crowd favorite. It's from 5 to 8 p.m. at Ironwoods Park. We're talking all the things you love. Pumpkin carving, hay rides, s'mores by the fire, rock climbing, face painting, mini golf, and the can't miss glowing pumpkin float across the pond at 7 p.m. Get your tickets at leawood.org/register by September 29th. Again, that deadline to register is September 29th for the Friday, October 10th event. And let's maybe cut the scary music now. All right, well, that was just rude. And that will do it for Leawood 360. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find episodes at leawood.org/podcast. Tell a friend, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.